let's just sew whatever. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to add the connectors to the Alaine handbag and going a little more in depth with how to do them. And you'll see here I have interfaced my connectors with a 3/4 inch wide non-woven interfacing. I use Decaville Light. You could use 809 or some people even like to use Peltex for theirs or Decaville Heavy. I feel like those can be a bit much, but you know, you can do trial and error and see what works for you. So I'm going to just grab a piece of tape and lay it over the top portion with like the trapezoidal ends. Okay, just like that. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold in the sides to the center. And that's what's nice about having an exact width of interfacing, is it kind of helps keep the shape so you don't fold it in too much or too little. And it just kind of ends up looking really perfect. So there's that. I'll just keep on going. And I really highly recommend adding some of the non-woven interfacing, or even if you have a scrap of woven interfacing, just to give it a little something extra so it doesn't tear. You'd hate to work so hard on a bag and then have it rip after a few months of wear. So this will definitely help with that. So you can see they all line up pretty perfectly. And now what we're gonna do is we're going to top stitch along these long edges only. So where it flares out is where we're gonna stop. But I actually like to start here and work my way down, around, then back up, just so there's not a lot of spare stitch lines. I'm gonna use a stitch length of 4. I'm just gonna do a little back stitch, go up, and then come back down. And you just wanna keep an eye and make sure they're fairly parallel with where you start and stop your stitch lines. And then instead of cutting it off my machine, I'm just gonna keep going. And then I can trim them all at once. And then there is a note in the pattern about how you can add piping, so I'm going to show you that on one of them, but I'm not going to be adding piping to this bag. Yeah, just because I can't think of a good color that really matches. But I have made lots of bags with this connector with piping, and it always looks super cool. All right, so they're all sewed together, stitched down, and you can just trim that. And then if you have that little heating lighter tool, the the thread zap, you can use that on the bottom of that so it doesn't start to unravel. I'm not using mine because I still haven't changed the battery. So that's my bad, y'all. Just trim it all up. And these connectors can be a little bit tricky to trace and cut, so I definitely recommend, if you can, getting a little cutting mat or something from the dollar store and making your own template, or even using a few layers of cardstock taped together. That'll really help you get those lines nice and straight. I have a few of them that are messed up because I was trying to use up scraps, but it'll still work. So now I'm gonna grab a piece of hardware, a 3/4 inch connector. My bad. And we're gonna slide that connector through the handle. Oops. Oh, that's right, I was showing piping. but you're gonna fold that under about 1 inch. So let's see, just about. And then you can use a piece of tape there to hold it down if you want, or you could even clip it in place just to hold it for now, but that's what it will end up looking like. So let me go ahead and show you guys the piping technique. Oh, I got plenty of red. So you don't want to cut it just yet, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn our connector around, lay the piping in the center, and just kind of work our way around so we can see how long we'll need it. And it definitely wouldn't hurt to have a little extra. So it looks like it's gonna be about 8 inches. So I will cut it now. And now that you have that measurement. And then I'm going to use this smaller basting tape. This is the 1/4 inch basting tape. You can see mine is a mess, but that's okay. And we're just gonna start by putting the tape in the middle and just kind of folding it to the shape. And you can turn it on itself, it'll turn out fine. And just kind of slowly tape it and fold it at those corners. Again, I've made so many of these, which is why it looks super easy for me, but it took me a while to get it first. Don't ask me why I thought of this. I added a whole bunch of piping to bags. All right, and then we're just gonna slowly peel it off. And you can see how those corners kind of keep their shape. And if not, you can just kind of push them back in. And then with our connector facing up, hopefully you guys can see this. I'm trying to check in the camera. Where am I? There, okay, that should be good. You're going to start in the back center and just kind of lay that thread right behind the connector. You can see I'm just kind of turning there and pushing it along the tape. At this end, we're just kind of turning it and pressing, hiding that back thread. And then turn it again at the corner. And it should meet up here, and that's where you'll want to trim that excess. You don't want too much. So it looks like maybe 7.5 would do it. But it's better to have extra than not enough. And then you'll go ahead and add your square connector and fold that under, and then you can tape this in place and top stitch all the way around. So that's how you add piping if you so choose. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and continue taping all of these down. So I'm adding a piece of double-sided tape to the spade or shovel part of this connector. So that way when I fold it over, it kind of holds it in place. So, like that. And then just to make sure they're pretty consistent, you can lay them on top of each other to make sure they're about the same size. And it's really important to make sure that you're folding over enough, because if you're not able to sew through this part well enough, it could come undone. Again, you hate to work this hard on a bag and have things come loose or break, so make sure it's folded under quite a bit, at least a thumb's worth. That would be an interesting name. I'm just gonna go ahead and add one more piece of tape on that connector so that it doesn't shift while I'm sewing. Again, if it starts to tack up your machine, you can put it down lower so that you're not sewing through it. Or you can use even a thinner tape or something to that effect. So let's go ahead and grab our main panels, set everything else aside. And I did not add Decovil Light to my panels because I'm using a cotton or canvas fabric, I'm sorry. And you know, there's a Decovil shortage, so I'm just trying to be real sparing about how I use it. So to place our connectors, we're gonna go 1.5 from the top of the main panel and 2 inches from the side. So I've got a ruler across the top at 1.5 inches, and then I've got my smaller ruler measuring the 2-inch mark. And we're gonna insert the corner right there. And make sure that's pressed down pretty well. So again, I've got a 2-inch ruler here, taking off my tape, and that's where I'm gonna put this top corner right here where this connector meets. That's where that goes. And then press it down. And now I'm gonna sew these on. And there are 2 different ways you can sew them, depending on your machine and how well your machine likes to act. My favorite look is to sew 2 lines across the outer edge and not across, and then just add a rivet, maybe even 2 rivets. But that's because my machine doesn't go well over these big bump differences. But of course you can stitch across the entire connector if you so choose. So right now I'm gonna zoom in and show you guys how I stitch those connectors on. Okay, sorry for the shaking camera. Hopefully we're zoomed in enough and you guys can see. I'm gonna keep my stitch length at 4. I'm gonna kind of move my connector up just a little bit, that hardware piece. And I'm gonna start at the outer edge, about 1/8 of an inch away. I'm gonna backstitch to secure, and then keep going. You see my connector's kind of getting in the way, but that's okay. I'll just move it slowly. And just follow 1/8 of an inch from the outer edge. And then as I'm getting to that bottom point, I just slowly pivot away. You can use your hand, or the turn wheel, I'm sorry, just to kind of control the speed. Backstitch at the top, and then I'm gonna make 1 line of stitching, just 1 little boop to the other side and come around. And just follow that stitch line 1/8 of an inch in. Again, just go really slowly at that point. And then come around. And then backstitch here, and then just sew 1 line in the opposite direction. So I'm gonna go backwards. And then I've properly avoided going over this big hump, the height difference there. Now, if you are going to use this method, you cannot just leave it like that. You will have to add a rivet or 2, but just 1 should be fine right there. So keep that in mind. If you're making it this way, that's how you're gonna wanna sew it. So I'll start with this other one. Just kind of make sure nothing has shifted, everything looks good. And we're gonna start at the outer corner. Just kind of move that connector out of the way. Back stitch, follow the outer edge. And then kind of reverse if you have to. And then just one stitch line. This also looks really cool if you have like an accent thread color or something to that effect. And you can also use this double stitch method and still sew over the connector portion as well. You don't have to do it this way. Again, I just know that my sewing machine foot is so rough that it will mess it up. And I have tried other sewing machine feet and they're just a little too thin. So that's what it looks like from the back side. See, they're not perfect, but it is black thread, so it's not quite as noticeable. Then I just eyeball where I'm gonna add a rivet, and I'm gonna add my rivet. So that's what I'm doing off camera. So adding the post and then the cap. And then I'm going to press it down. So there are those connectors added. So we'll go ahead and add the other half now. And you could definitely place these all at once if you needed to. And if you're having trouble getting the placement just right, you can use the pattern piece and just lay it directly on. So 2 inches from the outer edge. Just kind of push that up against your ruler, and that should help make a nice even connection. Go ahead and add the other 2. And I have sewn a lot of these connectors, which again is why it's going so fast for me. Please take your time. Don't feel like you need to rush to go as fast as I am. And if you're adding piping on these, you don't really need to sew it any other way, in a specialty way, I should say. Just the normal, usual way we're doing it is fine. If you have a really wide walking foot for your machine, let's say you have a domestic sewing machine, you could use a Teflon foot, or you could use a zipper foot with a little bit of Scotch tape on the bottom of it. I'm not saying it will definitely work and be easy, but it might help you. You can still go nice and slow. All right, I'm just gonna add these rivets, and then we're done with these connectors. I hope you guys enjoyed this in-depth tutorial on adding the strap connectors for the Alaine handbag. Be sure to check out the rest of my channel for more in-depth videos on this handbag, and make sure you're subscribed.